The biggest thing that people don't understand in these facilities is that, first off, every pesticide you apply has a half-life, but half-lives are determined on outside environment. And most of these, when someone does,
ultraviolet plays a huge role.
Huge role. Not just ultraviolet, wind, rain, all of these different things in which one of the biggest ways you simulate rain is with foliar. The best way to foliar, and this is how I started talking to Zach, was Hey, welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we're here to talk about all things cannabis and culture, brought to you by 5-8. We are back here today with my good buddy Zach from BioSafe, and as always, Jayhawk.
Hello. Good to be here. We have brought Zach in from BioSafe to really talk about, obviously, his story a bit, but also, really talk about some of the, ins and outs of how some of the chemistry works in hypochlorous acid and peroxide and some of these things. And we're going to get into a variety of things. And before I forget as well, if anybody hears of anything interesting on this show, and whether it's been on this show or any of the Jug Dealers podcasts, obviously we have an array of different products that are, available through Gabe and I as Jug Dealers. Let us know. We'd love to put the products in your hands. If you work in a commercial grow and you'd like to sample it for the grow, or you'd like to sample it at home first, please let us know. It's an open invitation.
First taste on us, baby.
First taste on us.
Just like any good jug dealer, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and anyway, just like any good jug dealer. Without further ado, I want to introduce Zach here, and actually I want him to introduce himself. But this is our illustrious guest, and go for it, Zach. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey guys, my name is Zach Riccardi. I am the National Cannabis Specialist for BioSafe Systems. I've been in the cannabis industry loosely since about 2007. I grew up here in Colorado, but rather than go to a rack or work at Safeway, I elected for option C and ended up moving out to California. Was chasing a professional skateboarding dream at that point, but got involved in
Dude, I didn't know that, bro. You're like, dude, half the guys in our building are all
This is why we do this. Yeah, we're here to give people stories. So where in Colorado?
Golden.
Okay.
Born and raised.
Golden in the golden years, huh?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's getting a little overrun. I mean, I don't really know. I don't spend any time down there.
South Boulder now.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that you're actually a Colorado native. That's not very common out here.
No, I mean, I can't. I mean, to be fair,
I don't know many.
Claim it. You can't claim it. I mean,
Grambo, you're from Iowa, right?
No, yeah. He's from the Midwest, like the rest of us, or a few East Coasters like Gabe sprinkled in there. So, I mean, as far as like your upbringing, Golden, Colorado, normal folks, what was like, as far as, was there cannabis in the home? Were your folks? I
brought it in, yeah.
If you brought it in.
Were your folks like strict about it, or
they just didn't want to see me get in trouble? And
sounds familiar.
They knew that some of the kids that I was hanging out with were known, because Golden, again, it was a small town.
It was small back then, bro. I mean, it's still small, but it was small back then.
So if the cops knew you, they would mess with you pretty frequently. But it's cool now. Their attitude on it has completely changed. I smoked my dad's first joint with him a couple of years ago, and
congratulations.
Mom hits me up every now and then. And,
you make sure the folks stay stocked up. No, it's similar. With me, cannabis was only brought in the home by myself, and early on, my parents were definitely dabbling in cannabis in the 70s and whatnot. But as far as like for me in the home, Gabe had a little bit different.
Yeah, I smoke weed with my folks. Straight up.
I do now, but I didn't. But I didn't then. I had a pretty innocent upbringing in that regard from cannabis. I mean, did it ever get you on the wrong side of the law?
You ever get in trouble?
That's why I had to move to California.
You know what?
What's that story look like?
Well, and not the first time we've heard that story, huh?
I got in trouble at a party. There was a kid that was hitting on a girl that I really liked at the time.
Are you a teenager at this point? Like under 18?
I'm 15.
Yeah.
And I get into a fight, and the police get called, and I get put on probation. And I didn't get in any more trouble other than I couldn't pee clean UAs because I liked
smoking. Yeah.
And
that's how they get you.
My very last little interaction with Jeffco probation was my PO knocking on my door and saying that it had dawned on him that he had never done a home visit. And at that point, I never thought he was going to come by the house. So in my closet, I had a little painting lamp with a bulb and like a solo cup with two little itty bitty swag seedlings. And he turned around, he looked at me, he goes, "Hey, Zach, can you say revocation?" And I was like, fuck.
What? No one wants to hear that.
Yeah. I figured if they wanted me to do time, they would have to come get me. So I went out to California and everything ended up working out for the best. And they dropped the charges against me when I got picked up for drunk in public. And I bet you they just figured he's California's problem now.
Right. Bye-bye. Well, then when did you circle back to Colorado then?
It would have been probably late 2012. It was right around the time that we passed Ruck.
Yeah. Okay. So it would have been, we were 2012 was when we went rec for sure. So, and did you come back specifically because Colorado had gone rec? Makes sense. A lot of people did. Yeah. I happen to be lucky enough to be here. I finished my degree in horticultural food crop production at CSU in December 11, and then it went legal. So yeah, I mean,
perfect timing.
Timing was solid. So you'd been out in California, been learning your chops. I mean, any education in your field? Have you been to school for this at all? I mean, on the job training. I mean, give us a little bit of a taste of that.
I mean, I was very fortunate to work with some really old school guys when I moved to California. My first summer, I went.
What part of Cali were you in?
All over, man. My first summer was up in Boonesville.
Okay,
I was a trimmer up in Mendo, and then I spent a good amount of time in the Bay Area, the city.
And, back when it was still cool.
Yeah, back when it was fun. Awesome.
My wife, Allie, and I, we spent like a year-ish in San Diego, and then we were in Santa Cruz until we moved back to Colorado.
Oh, wow. So cool. You did literally, you painted
the whole tour.
Yeah, you did the whole tour. Santa Cruz is really nice as well.
That's my favorite spot.
Yeah, man.
What kind of gardens were you working in at the time?
A little bit of everything, man. One of the first guys that taught me, John, he had veg lights in his house. That's it. It was just T5s and metal halides. And then his backyard was a giant greenhouse and he would dig tree pits and he would throw bananas and rusty nails and fish guts.
Everything.
That's how he fed it.
Bro, it's just like FPJ to the back, like just old school, throw it in a pit. Like, I love it.
How was that flower? Were they doing light depths back then or no?
Yeah.
They were doing the depths.
We were pulling tarps. It was honestly some of the best flower I've ever smoked, but I can't say that, it's just the way that he was growing it, the care that went into it.
Well, we always talk about the soil colloid in that part. Like we talk about how like Napa is really good for producing grapes. I'm a firm believer that one of the reasons that bud from California was so good was because of the environment, the soil, everything that went into it.
But I would also say that it was the selection pressures that happened there. So they were passing down these genetics and selecting out of their environment. So like that kind of heirloom aspect of it, if you will, like that's where I think personally, and don't get me wrong, some of the best herb I've ever smoked is out of Trinity County, out of Humboldt, has been, either greenhouse
Grass
or tarped
Valley
or whatever, and just really good, clean sunlight, things like that. But also people, part of the places that were really heavily grown in, it was more about being clandestine and away from the public than it was about, being the best soils in the world or whatever, right? Because even in a forest situation, the soils are very poor. And why is that? Because it's all above ground and everything. If you go into a rainforest, the soil is very, very thin, and that's why they had to slash and burn, as we were talking about on the potash episode, and then also move on within a couple 3 years. But anyhow,
we had a spot out by Ben Lomond in the mountains, and we sprayed organicide because we had a scale problem because we were growing in the forest.
Yeah,
and perimeter alarm goes off one night, and we're getting ready to do our thing. It was a bear. Because organicide has fish fatty acids in it. And lesson the hard way that night.
Yeah, right. It's like, what do they say? Like no bone meal, no fish stuff, all that. Like you got to stay away from that out in the hills.
So at the time, this is kind of quasi legal? Or you under like the caregiver program?
Yeah, we had cards.
Okay. Yeah. So that would have been what, Prop 215 then, right?
Yeah.
So this is basically 2007 to 2015. You come back to Colorado, or sorry, 2012. Sorry, about a 5-year period in California. Is that where you ran across BioSafe? Was back here in Colorado, or take us from there?
So I got introduced to BioSafe working at a distributor here in Denver called American Clay Works.
Yep, we know American Clay Works. Yeah. Shout out to American Clay Works. Thanks for the support, guys.
And basically, what had happened was the CDA had gotten wise to people using all different kinds of gnarly, ornamental.
What do you mean?
Pesticides.
Is this like 14, 15? Yeah, because I was cultivating at that time, and I remember that's when we kind of started doing tagging, and we started. Yeah, they started realizing that, like, hey, these guys might be spraying these plants with some stuff that they should maybe
not only that, and you guys were there right along with me, but they were breaking it down, Avid and stuff like that, into small individual shots, doing very legal things with very toxic and caustic products. So at
first though they put out a banned list. Right. They didn't even, they didn't know how they were going to approach it, but they said under no circumstances can you use these like 15 products. And
Floramite, forbid.
I can tell you, dude, most of the growers were using at least one of those 15.
At least one of them.
If not all three in one shot.
I mean, I won't even call this person out, but I specifically remember the witch's brew. It was
like literally, it was like Floramite, Eagle
Avid
20
and
Avid
together.
It was like, and you'd have people who'd spray. They'd be in there like in their shorts.
You can smell it. Just think about it.
Yeah. Well, those petroleum, I'm fast forwarding. So hold on. So before you went to BioSafe in that 2012 to let's say 2014, you were working in gardens in Denver?
Yes, sir.
Where did you work?
I helped the Mindful guys. I ran an IPM program for a company called Sweetleaf.
So you're part of the Phil gang. That's how you met Phil. So I
met Phil at American Clay.
Okay. But he would come in and shop.
Yeah.
For those particular products that were used in alongside New Millennium at the time.
Yeah,
right?
and they distributed a bunch of stuff as just a bunch of different.
But it was that one sugar and a couple things, right?
The Bombardier
and stuff like that.
The aspartame.
Yep.
All that stuff that was pretty unique to them, and not for nothing.
That's a Phil recipe, though.
Well, and Phil's background is more real horticulture, which a lot of us. It's funny you talk about working at Mindful because I think Mindful was one of the first buildings to use the EPAPs. And it was really, up until that point, most of the gardens you were seeing in Denver were people basically building out basements and warehouses.
Yeah.
And so and I remember walking the Mindful.
Or even offices where they're vegging in the hallway kind of stuff. These legacy grows, you've never seen anything like it.
And I remember walking
it was truly atrocious.
And just being like, oh my God, like this is meeting Phil and just being like,
this is a real growth.
This dude is just completely different. So yeah, that's a cool.
That's a great person.
So then you went to Sweetleaf and were they the ones that got in trouble as I remember? Yeah. So yeah.
I left about 6 months before that happened.
Okay.
It was a very interesting company and I appreciated my tenure there, but it was definitely, not the right fit for me.
Yeah. I mean, look, cannabis, I hate to say it, but, we all know where a lot of us came from when it comes to cannabis. And so maybe some of us did some things that were skating legality beforehand. So when you get into the legal side,
hypothetically speaking, of course, but also, to further that, it's like a lot of us have been to different companies and things like that over time. I mean, this is definitely, it's an industry that's happened so fast, so there's definitely a number of people that, it's taken a little while to find their forever home.
Were you in the garden at those spots just as a cultivator, or what were you doing there?
Mindful, I was just more of consulting on stuff.
Okay.
At Sweetleaf, if there weren't enough employees, I was putting on a Tyvek and spraying.
Okay. Yeah. So you were doing IPM.
Yes.
Okay. That actually that's nice because it leads us down the road.
Right. Yes.
Well, how? Just out of curiosity, if you were the IPM guy, because I mean. So we're talking, this is the time where Colorado Department of Ag is coming in. We're just starting to have to fill out pesticide application sheets. Like it's really, before that, it was the Wild West. So what was your expertise? Like, how did you approach that?
Basically, knowing a lot about different organic pesticides and fungicides from working at ACW.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
I was able to, at that position, it was very unique because I would talk to a potato grower, a begonia grower, and a cannabis grower all within an hour, and they'd all have the same problem.
Right.
And so I could use different industries to kind of help one another out. And say, like, have you tried this? Or, this product has worked in this situation, or, use these bugs, or, try mixing this in conjunction with this. And so
a lot of people in our industry, like, we didn't even know about predatory bugs. We were so about the petroleum-based pesticides, which, as you and I will discuss, they become part of the plant tissue, in which that's a whole different animal. When that stuff becomes systemic and it really becomes part of the plant, people don't understand half-lives and all that stuff that it takes to get out of there. So
much less an LD50 or anything like that.
IPM has always kind of been the redheaded stepchild of the industry. And it doesn't really matter to growers until it matters. And then it's the only thing that
that's one of the reasons why I even say, even something like Slicium, is part of an IPM program, because it's creating a healthier, stronger, more vigorous plant. So that, like, your environment's part of IPM. By definition, it's integrated pest management. Of course, pesticides being part of that, but the environment and even plant practices, plant health,
having the plant do a lot of the work itself.
Well, and that's why I love to call Slicium liquid insurance, because you don't need insurance until you need it. It's like, it doesn't matter. Once you break your arm, you're pretty damn happy that you have that insurance, right? Until you break your arm, it's like, oh, I don't really need this stuff. So I really look at products like that, where it's like, it's literally liquid insurance. Is it one of the technically 17 plant essential nutrients? No. But is there real benefit to it?
Are there arguably 60 that are beneficial that we don't talk about? Yeah. So how do you go from ACW over to BioSafe? Well, I assume you guys had the BioSafe products at Clayworks.
Okay. I would recommend, Xeritol and Oxyphos and Azagard to a lot of growers. I had experience with it at Sweetleaf because I used it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And one day I was doing the Instagram thing for ACW where, just promoting products and
the IG game.
Dude, if it wasn't for IG, I wouldn't have my job.
I say that to a lot of people when I won the Cannabis Cup, man.
Especially early on and still today, it's a huge part of it. You know what I mean? And it's a big part of how people can have that direct connection. You know what I mean? And I've seen let's just say I've seen the story in various capacities a number of times in this industry.
I think that's how I probably got in touch with you,
More than likely. I was on IG a lot, and Jeff Klein, who's the vice president of BioSafe now, he was manager of sales at the time. He just hit me up, said he was going to be in Denver.
Nice.
And I was like, BioSafe wants to give me a job.
You're like, I'm here. This is happening.
I lined up, some growers that I had been working with that were having a lot of success with what I've been recommending. And by the second visit, we weren't even talking business. We were just quoting the Big Lebowski and laughing. So
you knew you were in. Okay, nice work. And that was what, 2000?
It's like 16, 17, right?
It would have been right at the end of 2017.
I was going to say, I was going to say 16 because I think I met you.
Because this is my 6th year.
Yeah, as we go into segue, I had taken over Sacred Seed. And when I took over Sacred Seed, they were one of the first cultivations in Denver to get busted for pesticide usage, in which they had sent some trim out. The trim actually is what tested hot.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because you concentrate the pesticides because they're concentrates.
Well, right, it's concentrated.
And so we went back, and it turns out the garden was dirty. This is end of 16, 17. So Colorado Department of Agriculture is really starting to get involved. The one thing the listeners need to understand is the government didn't really want to get involved with this stuff, like the local government, because they know once they get involved, they have to be involved.
Well, they got to
so they were trying to be as standoffish as possible.
I remember even they were just adopting, and not to cut you off, but they were even adopting, whatever they use for tobacco, we'll just do that.
Yeah, there was a lot of that stuff. But what ended up happening was this cultivation, they had terminated their head grower. I believe they got busted. Ironically enough, they had powdery mildew. Well, they had powdery mildew, but they weren't spraying with Eagle 20, but they were still spraying with forbidden fluoromite, which are both petroleum-based pesticides. What ended up happening and what we ended up doing, and how I met Zach and how we kind of got together, was the biggest thing that people don't understand in these facilities is that first off, every pesticide you apply has a half-life, but half-lives are determined on outside environment. And most of these, when someone does,
ultraviolet plays a huge role.
Huge role. Not just ultraviolet, wind, rain, all of these different things in which one of the biggest ways you simulate rain is with foliar. The best way to foliar, and this is how I started talking to Zach, was with the Zerotol. And then we actually started doing Zerotol flushes in the root zone, in which we did a process called Fenton's reagent. And you take iron sulfate and you have peroxide in your drum, and you put the iron sulfate in there. And when the iron sulfate combines with the peroxide, it oxidizes. Mm-hmm. And as you have this bubbling cauldron,
an actual reaction,
smoking,
a chemical reaction.
When you pour it through, it actually, from what I understand, it kind of bonds with the stuff in there and helps strip that stuff out. So what we actually did was we were able to get plants clean of pesticides in 5 months. And Colorado Department of Agriculture would come through every couple weeks, and they'd test the leaf tissue samples,
and they were seeing it,
seeing it decline. And we couldn't have done it without the products from BioSafe. I couldn't have done it without having Zach talk me through it, and explaining the products to me.
And I was going to say, and I mean, even, we're going to play like we don't know anything about it. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on BioSafe? Why don't you give just, who are they, where they come from? What specifically are we using here in this industry? Because I know, of course, if you get on there on your website, for example, there is a ton of different products.
Ag, food.
So obviously let's, focus on the things that are really available here and just give us a little rundown on your suite.
So BioSafe, guys, has been around for 25 years this year.
Wow. Okay.
Awesome. Good for you guys.
We got started basically wanting to provide solutions to folks that are, working with water in some way, be it potable water, be it pre or post-harvest ag, be it horticulture. We understood that it started with water. And so our first products were to clean water and basically make it usable, whether it be wastewater or irrigation water, what have you.
Interesting. Okay.
Our founder, Rob LaRose, his vision was to basically leave the earth better than we found it. And so
I love that. Wow. Okay. Excellent. I mean, wow. Sounds like the kind of ethics for a company I would love to work with. Thank you very much. Good job.
There's, a lot of folks out there that have solutions to problems that have harmful residuals. And we can pride ourselves in saying that we can fix your problems without hurting the earth.
Wow.
Our flagship chemistry and what is going to be used most here in cannabis is a compound called PAA, or peroxyacetic acid. And peroxide in a conglomeration. Basically, PAA is glacial grade acetic acid, which is very pure vinegar, and peroxide that we've stabilized in solution. And the reason that we like that PAA versus just regular peroxide is that PAA is a more stable molecule.
Okay.
And it really only degrades when it comes in contact with a contaminant.
So it's searching out a contaminant, if you will.
It gives a user a lot more longevity. But
gotcha.
That zero residual aspect still rings true. So after we're done sanitizing or disinfesting an environment, there is no residual that's going to, hurt anybody. It breaks down into oxygen and water, which are two components that are.
So in other words, it just takes longer for that to happen as opposed to just say straight hydrogen peroxide, which happens in a matter of 20 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, we were talking. Yeah. I mean, they say maybe half hour, an hour, right?
It all depends on water quality and temperature, but the dirtier your water is and the warmer it is, the faster that ORP is just going to do.
I guess I don't really think about that part of it, how dirty, because that's the first thing that's going to sterilize.
Right. You're right. It's just going after it hard. I didn't even think about that either. So essentially it's the same kind of reaction and going and seeking out and cleaning. It's just rather than happening in, let's say, an hour or less, it's happening over 24 to 48 hours in a much more stable molecule, same end result as far as turning into just.
It just gives us a lot better longevity out of the solution.
Yep.
And depending on how contaminated the solution is, you may not have enough longevity out of regular H2O2 to completely eliminate an issue.
Good point.
And I would always,
I didn't even think about that. It might exhaust itself, if you will.
So the one thing that's nice, and I actually want to get into PPE with you in a second about this. I actually have a funny little story about not wearing the right PPE. But the nice thing is,
not funny stories.
I learned the hard way. But the nice thing is, what I would do in my facility in Maryland was I would actually mix up like a 30 or 40 gallon drum, and once it's mixed, your PPE is way different than when you're mixing it. And I definitely want people to be very cognizant of that, because one of the things that I'm unbelievably stringent about is 33% peroxide, 29% peroxide will mess you up real good.
If you get it on your skin, it's quite uncomfortable, but it's not the end of the world.
So
it's just
okay,
turn white and slough.
I was about to say, that white,
it hurts.
Yeah.
So
the thing is, guys, is eye protection.
Yeah, big time.
If you get the concentrate in the aqueous membrane of your eye,
you got problems.
You will go blind.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah,
it's a real chemistry. It works really well, but there's a reason that it's used.
Yeah, totally. No. It definitely makes sense. And what products is this specifically?
Anything that would have high levels of peroxyacetic acid or H2O2. So we're talking like the Xeritol 2.0.
Okay, that's what I was going to say.
Sanidate 12.
So why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of the suite of products that are used and how they're used in conjunction with each other, and really, again, what are people using in our industry that BioSafe's doing?
So we sell a lot of azadirachtin into cannabis because of the fact that we are the only company in the United States that manufactures it. We've got a facility in Sparks, Nevada that kicks it out. And the only thing that ever goes through those lines at that facility is Azagard. I don't know if you guys remember, but like 2017, 2018, the state of Oregon went through their approved list.
Oh, yeah.
And found a bunch of products that contained
it was
other
a ton.
products.
It was a ton.
And it is nothing malicious by those other companies.
Right.
But they bottle it over in India where neem grows. And so their quality control is next to nothing. And it would really stink to grow an entire crop and then get flagged for a pesticide.
I didn't even think about that. Just line contamination.
Yeah.
Because, our EcoWorks comes out of India, but that's really what they specialize in, is that EcoWorks, and they're not doing. But if they were, it's like switching the line, at a bar and switching it, not flushing out the lines in different beers. Man, I didn't even think about that. So even that level of contamination.
When we're talking about PPB and some of these petroleum-based chemistries that become ingrained in the plant tissue, you're not going to get rid of it in an indoor environment.
Right.
It would just really stink to have some heirloom genetics or, an entire crop that was banging get flagged, and now you can't even turn it into oil at that point.
Right.
But the Azagard is a really cool product because it allows any growers dealing with a multitude of insects to really get a leg up.
Yep.
Having that, growth regulant capability is really good for root aphid. Taking away that food source is going to weaken any insect population we go after. That ovicidal property, if we can take away their ability to lay eggs, next week we're dealing with less.
Right. Obviously you're trying to break that cycle. That's the biggest thing when it comes to insects, right? Understanding what the cycle is and trying to break it, and it can be done in a variety of different ways, right? As
you're going to rotate products a lot.
And again, even as which is a great segue into like, what are some unique things that you think about as far as an IPM strategy? Not only when it comes to BioSafe, of course, but just as a grower, like what are some tips, secrets? What does IPM mean to you?
And this might sound kind of stupid, but think like a bug.
I don't think that sounds stupid at all, by the way.
There's
go on.
A lot of folks, when they will go after root aphids, they're only doing drenches.
Yep.
And the problem with root aphids is, even though they're very small, they're very smart.
Right.
They've become incredibly adept at, basically running at whatever we're throwing at them.
Right.
But if you watch them, like if you do an irrigation cycle that's not a pesticide application, after about 45 minutes, they go back to that container or block and they go back to what they were doing, and they get complacent with that moisture being present. So don't do the, your drench as your first application. Get it wet first, then apply wet to wet. They're less apt to run away. You're using less product at that point.
Sure.
You're going to get even permeation.
Well, and again, just by virtue of the hydraulic conductivity of water, you've already wetted the substrate. So you can do just a little bit of it. It's going to run right through very evenly through the whole substrate, right? Because I know it seems a little bit counterintuitive to people, but a substrate that's wet accepts water much easier. So, right. So it's hydrophilic as opposed to being hydrophobic, right?
Yep.
And everybody's seen that when your pot pulls away, right? And it's like, ooh, that's really dry. And you put the water on, it just goes, whoop.
You ever let Pro-Mix dry out all the way? Good luck getting that wet.
Good luck getting that wet.
Right.
Good luck getting that wet again. So again, it's a little bit counterintuitive. But think about the desert. Why do you have flash floods that happen when these water? Well, because it's so dry, the ground can't even accept the water that it's being thrown onto it. It just runs right down it. So I think that's a really applicable and practical thing for people to remember.
Anytime I think of IPM, I think of it like a triangle, guys. And the bottom two parts are going to be a conducive environment and a susceptible host. But to actually make the pyramid, complete, we either need a pest or a pathogen to complete that whole thing. And, to address that top issue, you have to make sure that, again, we've got healthy plants and that, like you were saying, the environment isn't conducive to growing mold or mildew. If you guys are spraying for powdery mildew every 5 days, you need more dehumidifiers. You're not going to spray
There's a problem.
away.
There's a further problem. This consistent and constant barrage of spraying is not what's going to fix your problem.
It's part of IPM, but being diligent, scouting, doing plant work, like on my IPM schedule that I give to commercial growers, and for heavy pressure, we spray 3 days a week. For reactive pressure, or, it's just a proactive approach, it's 2 days a week, but those other days are plant maintenance.
Right.
Be it scouting or,
ounce of prevention, right? Pound to cure. It's like, these things, there's a reason why these little sayings exist. Right. And it's really important that whole prevention aspect of it. And I mean, I would say people understanding, and it's something where, I plan on actually doing a whole show on signs versus symptoms, but that very annoying thing of being on our side of things and having people constantly coming and giving us symptoms and saying, what's the problem? Or I think this is the problem, as opposed to backing up a step and finding the sign. Where's the insect? Have you put out cards? Have you done any leaf tissue analysis? Have you, have you checked your runoff? And I'm just giving a few examples, right? Signs is how you fix problems. Symptoms is a general plant response. Right. I mean, okay, here's an example. Overwatering and underwatering, they look exactly the same. I mean, at the end of it, when shit has hit the fan, overwatering look the same. And yellowing looks the same.
In the case of something like verticillium, by the time you see the signs, it's too late. There's nothing you can do. Right.
So, and in that sense, obviously prevention. So you've got the Azogard, you've also got Xeritol, which is a cleaner, obviously, right?
So Xeritol and Sanidate are very similar chemistries, but I want all the growers to remember that they have two specifically different uses.
There's two things that I wanted to really focus on. Yeah, this is super important.
So. Xeritol is going to be for all your plant-based applications, guys. It's that 2% PAA we've found to be a lot friendlier to plant tissue while still having the peroxide be the workhorse and go after a lot of the different pathogens that can affect plants. So for foliar sprays, for root zone, disinfestations, for water treatment, Xeritol is going to be our go-to product.
What rates I know what rates I've used in the past, but what rates are you using in, let's say, so I've used it in my system as an injection. Where I've had it, I want to say at 5 mils, but I want to hear from you. But we've had it on the Anderson Fertigator, just in the line. We've had it where we did use it as a drench, and we've had it where we use it as a foliar. So do you mind giving our listeners a little?
So for foliar applications, we're going to have a little bit of a range. For like a pre-harvest or what I like to call fire hose rate, where we just have an outbreak that has occurred and we need to get it under control. Typically a 1% solution, which is 37 mils in a gallon, is what we recommend. That's going to, basically address any and everything that could be in that canopy, depending on what we're dealing with. Let's say if it is powdery mildew, you would probably want to add a surfactant such as like a Capsil or a widespread max that's an organosilicone.
How about the Oxy? I've used the Oxyphos as well with it before.
The Oxy is a great tool. Oxyphos in conjunction with the Xeritol. We would actually mix those at 13 ml of each.
Can you explain to our listeners what each one is doing as far as?
So the Xeritol is going to be our PAA, which is that very stabilized form of peroxide, and H2O2. And then our Oxyphos is going to be H2O2 and a component called potassium phosphite. And potassium phosphite is a PK molecule that literally causes something in the plant called an induced systemic response. It's like giving the plant a boost on its own natural defense system. The way that it works is it can't regulate the uptake of that PK molecule.
Sure.
And so it sends it into that stress response mode. And it's almost like going to the gym. Like the plant is just going to be able to exercise its own defenses a little bit better. But the phosphoric acid component actually lowers the pH of the cellular tissue of the leaf just enough so that it can go after the hyphae of the powdery mildew as well. So we're quite literally addressing the root of the problem, as well as having superior surface sanitation with that PAA being in the mix. And the really nice thing about Oxyphos, guys, is that it has a 21-day residual within the plant. So you can time your applications out to where you can have that response elicited the entire crop cycle. if you spray your moms before you take your cuts, like we spray them on Monday, we take our cuts on Tuesday, you're going to have 21 days in the dome where they're going to be protected against different, pathogens. If you don't have roots in 21 days, we can talk about that.
I see that look on your face over there. I see that look on your face.
I love the stability of it. I mean, because again, these things are, I think a lot of these things are, I don't want to say common knowledge. It's like, oh, you use H2O2 to clean things, right? But it's like taking it to, on a chemistry level to that next level of stabilization and saying, yeah, that's great chemistry, but it just doesn't last long enough. You know what I mean? It's very interesting. Dude, and honestly, I really like.
To me, it's like a Lamborghini from back in the day versus a brand new one. They're both really nice cars, but I know which one I would rather drive.
Well, there you go. And I mean, I honestly, even, looking at that and as we had the website pulled up for BioSafe, but, family owned, I love seeing that, that's obviously what we're a part of, we're powered by 5-8 here. That's a family owned company.
Well, Neil's about making the planet better. He's like, we're over fertilizing, plain and simple.
100%. And even, that whole other areas of horticulture and even you talking about that, it's a big part of what, what we've done at New Millennium and some of the things that have been brought into that may have been used standard in other parts of the horticultural world, but necessarily weren't known in cannabis and the hydro world. So, again, and yes, Gabe, my head was definitely working. I love that.
I saw the gears turning in there.
And it's like literally like boom, boom, boom.
But just to finish it up.
Yeah.
Once or twice in veg, depending on how long your veg cycle is.
21, 29. Yep.
Hit them when you flip. Week 3, week 6, assuming you're around a 9-week-ish flower cycle, you'll have that ISR response elicited the entire time.
Right.
And there are some companies out there.